Please welcome Alyssa Miller.
All right, Rochester, how we doing? Richard said, make it as big as I could, just no pyrotechnics. So, that's how we get things started. Awesome. So I'm Alyssa Miller, for those of you that don't know me, and I was this kid. How many of you were this kid? Right? Show of hands. Come on. Don't be shy. Right? We took things apart. We wanted to figure out how they worked. Right? That was me from like 3, 4 years old on. Took apart my toys, my parents' electronics. It wasn't always the most popular thing. God, if only they had known then, right? That would have been cool. But it's that curiosity, and I don't think this is a foreign concept to anyone in this room. That curiosity, that desire, that want to understand the way things function, how they work, that's at the core of what makes a hacker, right? Now, we see all sorts of stuff in the media, the pejorative use of that term, whatever. I won't even get into that argument because, well, I could do an hour-long keynote just on that. But this is my roots. And so I started there, 4 years old. I'm taking things apart. 12 years old, I went out and I got now I'm going to date myself here. I got a paper route. There are people in this audience right now who have no idea what a paper route is. Okay? I'm an old. I get it. It's cool. So we used to send kids out into the neighborhood at crazy o'clock in the morning when it was still dark to deliver newspapers. This was a great idea, by the way, kids, 12-year-olds. But I digress. 12 years old, got a paper out, saved up $1,000 some odd, went to Best Buy and bought this. All right, that is my very first computer. I bought it when I was 12 years old because, most kids with $1,000 at 12 years old probably wouldn't have bought a computer, especially back then. But that's where, it was just this excitement over technology and what it could do, and I wanted to be a part of it. Well, some of you might remember those discs they would send you in the mail. We got them from America Online, or there was this company, Prodigy. So the way this worked, for those of you that aren't aware, we had these online dial-up communities. This is pre-internet. We're talking 1989. So again, I've just dated myself. You can do the math. We didn't have the internet available to us yet. And so you had these dial-up communities. You could log in, they had games, they had kind of like a messaging platform, news, whatever. And they would send you these discs, and they gave you 20 hours for free. Well, at the end of the 20 hours, you got to have a credit card, and you got to start paying for this thing. I'm 12. Okay, I don't have a credit card. So what did I do? Well, I went to the library, and I got books on UART. I got books on serial comms and asynchronous comms, and long story short, I dug into this thing. I found an issue with some client-side validation. I broke into Prodigy, okay? I used it for probably 6 months, never paid for it. Now we think about that, right? And we think about that in terms of, wow, if I did that today, first of all, I probably would be telling you the story of a childhood criminal. You can debate whether or not what I did was criminal. It probably was. Statute of limitations, by the way, long since passed on this, so I'm okay to talk about it. But, that it wasn't about trying to steal. I guess it kind of was. But, it was curiosity. I figured it out. I found a whole way to manipulate it to do what I wanted to do. Again, that's what being a hacker is all about. Then the internet did come along, right? A few years later, they kind of released it to the public. We started getting online. We had this wonderful place called MIRC, MIRC was the client. It was the IRC servers that were really the key. And suddenly, this little teenager who thought she was the only one who was this weird that did all these things, because everybody at school told me I was weird and I was the only one who did all these things, suddenly I found my community. I found my hacker family in the IRC chat rooms of Undernet. And now I discovered there were tons of people like me. We slapped people around with trout. That was what we did at the time. Some of you get that reference. Some of you don't. That's okay. Look it up. We have Google now. AI-powered Google, nonetheless. But that's how far we've come, isn't it? Like, really, from these days to now, we've got supposed artificial intelligence running behind our search engines. So those are my roots. But let's talk about the rest of my roots. So, I did not think cybersecurity was a job. I didn't even think tech was a job. My intention was to become a doctor. I did 3 semesters at Marquette University, and I'll tell you what, 3 semesters of college-level chemistry will tell you whether or not you're cut out to be a doctor. I was not. So I scrambled. I found a new, computer science. I understand this. I'm already programming my computers. I could do this. This would be easy. Son of a gun, easy. But while I was still in school, I got my first job at a company called M&I Data Services as a programmer. This was the .com era. If you could program your way out of a paper bag, they would hire you. They just needed people to build. M&I became Metavante. They were then bought out by FIS. That buyout didn't go so well, so I moved on. I said, hey, I've been in financial services a long time. Let's go see what happens with the rest of the world. I got into consulting. I went to a company called Fishnet Security, now called Optiv. What did they do? They put me on all their financial services clients. But that was okay, because it worked. Then I moved to a company called Aspect Security, wonderful organization. That was shortly after the Optiv acquisition, merger, whatever we want to call it. Worked at Aspect Security, a company of 50 people. Worked there for 3 years. I led their application, the whole company was about application security, but I led their program services practice. I was working with CISOs and executives, not on assessing apps, but how do we build programs? How do we win buy-in? How do we get funding for those programs, et cetera? Then Aspect Security got bought up by EY. It became from 50 to 250,000. That wasn't for me. I stayed in consulting, though. I went to a little company there, the big red box, as I always referred to them, CDW. Most of us know them. Did you know they do consulting, too? Probably not, at least on the security side. But that's where I went. Now I was leading their security consulting practice. Left there, got into startup world for a little bit. I worked at Sneak for a year. That fell apart because the pandemic hit and the job that was supposed to have me traveling all over the world, speaking like this, suddenly wasn't going to work with the pandemic. Moved on, got back to financial services again with S&P Global Ratings as a BISO, Business Information Security Officer. So now I'm leading cybersecurity for $4 billion divisions of S&P Global. And then the day came. About 2.5 years ago, I got a message from the outgoing CISO at Epic saying, hey, I'm moving on to bigger and brighter things. They're doing a search. Send an email here with your resume if you want to be a part of that search. And man, did I think I hit the big time. I'm a CISO. This is where I wanted to get my whole life. It was awesome. And you know what it is? Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I don't love this job. I absolutely enjoy the hell out of it. I'm so glad I made it where I'd been working to get to for so many years of my life. But I learned some lessons. First of all, How many of you know who this person is? Ooh. That's awesome, because I'm used to attending like crazy hardcore hacker cons and everybody knows who Mudge is. Do you recognize him now? I tell you what, the first time I saw him dressed, I remember when he looked like that and he was in front of Congress. Then he goes back to Congress, now a part of Twitter, now no longer a part of Twitter anymore, and he looked like that. Like, but it doesn't always have to be like that. Now I'm standing up here, I'm in a blazer, I'm in leather pants and leather boots, because I can't decide where I want to be, and you know what? That's perfect. Because I'll tell you the thing that most important to me, most important to success of everyone in this room, is finding what is your weird thing. Now, I have a friend, a colleague, Phil Gerbishek. He's actually from Wisconsin. I saw him speak once, never knew he was from Wisconsin. He made some comment at the very beginning about his one weird fact is he's from Crivets, which is a tiny, tiny little town in northern Wisconsin. He said, who knows where Crivets is? Of course, he's expecting no hands. I'm sitting back there. Yeah, I know. But his point was, when you accept your authenticity, when you embrace it and use it as the thing that makes you, you, in your professional career, that's what drives you forward. Okay? Now, why am I telling you all this? Why do I care, right? Well, for me, my weird was, I'm a freaking hacker. I wanted to get into the executive suite. I did not think that that was something I really wanted to share with people, that I broke into stuff. As a kid, I was in undernet groups on IRC. That didn't seem like the thing. But you know what? First time I stood in front of a board and I said, yeah, I used to be a hacker. All their phones went, I swear to God, I actually watched this happen in real time. They're kind of bored, they're doing their thing, they're kind of listening to me talk. At the time, I was just a consultant. And I spoke up and I said, I'm a hacker. Suddenly, they were all interested. And that's when I realized I can embrace this. Now, we may not all be hackers in this room. Maybe we are, maybe we aren't. But there is something unique about you that you can embrace and you can leverage that will make you interesting and successful. And that's why I wanted to share that. Those were not the only lessons I learned. So going from hacker at 12 and before, to a CISO, as you can imagine, there were some growing pains, a lot of growing pains, things I learned along the way. One of the first, I have any SQL folks in the house? Do you see the potential badness here? Yeah. Working at M&I Data Services at the time, we ran an electronic payment platform. So you went into like most of us do now, we take it for granted. You go into internet banking, you can pay anyone. Now we got things like Zelle and PayPal and all the rest, right? Venmo and all that. But you used to be able to do this back in the mid to late 90s by just dialing up, or going online and doing this. We were just working on something. We were I don't even remember what we were releasing. Ran a query. The query was supposed to be set up to do a select, and it was supposed to, I had all the different things in there that I could take the select and immediately turn it into the delete, so I was going to get what I wanted. Had some things commented out. Long story short, that's what ran. I deleted 2.5 million rows of payment instructions. And by the way, this was before the days that we had like pseudo real-time backups or replications. So it was like recover to the night before's backup and then go through the application logs and replay the last 10 hours of activity that occurred since. Can you imagine how long that took? But the point is, mistakes happen. And as leaders in this space, in this industry, we need to be willing to embrace those. It does no good to run around and vilify people. It does no good to run around and post things on social media about how could they be so dumb and get hacked. How could they be so foolish to have that system running that had that old version of struts on it, and they never updated it? How did they not know that was 3 levels deep in their dependencies? Do you all know who I'm talking about? Who am I talking about? Equifax, right? Still today, that was 2017, still today, I hear people talking about that in the terms of how could they be so dumb? They should have been held negligent. There should be people in jail for that. Words I've actually heard. Who does that help? Does that make us any more resilient to attack? No. Did I learn when I deleted 2.4 million rows? Two-stage commit was my new best friend. But that's where we need to get to. And it's so important for us as leaders to be seen doing that. Because when we're out there in the world of cybersecurity, we're the ones they're looking to for answers. We're here because this is our area of chosen expertise. This is the area, maybe we have that undying passion. We eat, sleep, and breathe it every day. That was me for a long time. I've since learned how to have other passions in my life. But this is still my passion. Maybe for some of us, it's more just, hey, this is my 9 to 5, this is my career, and everything else is separate. You still chose to be the one out there. And people are looking to you. So when you go in and you say things like people from Equifax should be in jail or whatever, then you wonder why we've got the CISO of SolarWinds right now being told that he didn't do enough according to the SEC, and so we're going to put him on trial. You think you can kind of figure out where I stand on my opinion with that particular case. So we need to, this is something, it is okay. I guarantee you everybody in this room has a story like this. I will guarantee that every one of us has done that thing where like, oh shit, right? They happen. None of us are perfect. Here's another one. So you guys are not going to like me, by the way. If you're CISOs in here in particular, you're not going to like me because I am, keep in mind, anytime I say CISOs are or CISOs do, I'm included in this, okay? So I'm not just picking on other CISOs. I don't think I mean, my poop stinks like everybody else's, right? But there is this attitude, and this is a legit headline, okay? CISOs have the toughest job in the world. We ain't that special. Do you know what? Every person in that C-suite has a freaking hard job. Okay? Most of us, whether we're analysts, engineers, I don't care whatever your role is, we have hard jobs. You can be a programmer. That's a hard job. We don't do this stuff because it's easy. We get bored when it's easy and we move on to something else. So yeah, CISOs have a hard job. So does the CFO. So does the human resources officer. Think about what their challenges are. CFOs right now are trying to figure out, is crypto going to happen or not? Are we going to have cryptocurrency? Is that a thing? Is that something we should be worried about? What is AI going to mean in terms of how we report on our financials? The weirdest things that, seem kind of silly to us. But that's their day-to-day. Marketing officers are trying to figure out, well, how do I get the most effective reach without pissing off the people that I'm trying to connect with? The fact of the matter is you put on that little C badge, as my CIO loves to call it, you're saying, bring the pain, all right? That's what it's about. It's a hard job. That's why there's only one person with that C title for each of those, functional differences, because it's not easy. There's nothing special about us. Yeah, cybersecurity is a tough nut to crack. Yeah, it's never actually going to be cracked because it's constantly evolving. We accept that. That's part of our job. So buck up, Buttercup. You want to be a CISO? Here it is. It's rewarding, it's fun, and it's hard as hell. But one way to make it easier is to start figuring out how you unite your business knowledge and your security knowledge. Countless times, people have asked, I try to mentor people whenever I can, and one of the common questions is, if I want to be a CISO someday, what's something I should do? I say, go buy that book, 10-Day MBA. It's one of my favorite books in all the world. Because what I'm not going to do is stand up here and say, hey, you should go back to school and get your master's in business administration. That's a big-ass investment. And do I think that that's going to get you a C-level job? Maybe, maybe not. But what is important is understanding those concepts, and that book does a great job. So that's my one endorsement. On the other side, I got the CISM. I'm not really endorsing that. I had it for a while. It's great, cert, whatever, great. But, it's not about the certs. The point there is just to say, we focus a lot on that right side as cybersecurity professionals. We kind of don't always understand that the left side of that is equally as important as we get into more and more executive level positions. The job of a cybersecurity executive is the same as the job of every other executive. It's to be where the buck stops in ensuring the success of the business. And I'll guarantee you, those other people in the C-suite, they're using a lot of the terminology you're going to find in that book or in that MBA program or in whatever source of reference you want to get. But you need to be able to communicate with them in their world. It's not about us. We are not some great pontificators of all the wonderful things of cybersecurity. Yes, we're experts in this space. It's where our expertise is. But that none of us would pretend to go walking in. I mean, if your CFO comes to you and starts, talking to you about GAAP principles and things, how much of that are you going to know? How much of that's going to be meaningful to you? So do the same for them. Bring it to a level and language that you can connect with them on. All right. Here's another one of my favorites. I think we're figuring this out, right? We put a term on this, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, FUD. And I think we're getting better as an industry recognizing that fear isn't a motivator. It's not. It's proven, okay? Neuroscience has proven this to us. If I want to motivate you to action, the worst thing I can do is try to scare you. So if I want to motivate my C-suite, the other members of my ELT, my board, I want to motivate them to support me, the worst thing I can do is make them scared of me. It's fight or flight response. This is what neuroscience tells us. So I throw this up here, this picture. Why do I have doctors on here? Well, there was a study done. There's actually a lot of these studies done because hand washing is a big deal in the medical world. So SUNY is one of them that did this. And what they did was they did a study on how they could improve hand washing compliance. There's specific times throughout the course of a day when a caregiver, doctor, nurse, whatever, is supposed to wash their hands. Specific things occur, go wash your hands. They started first with video surveillance. They warned them all in advance. You're going to be video surveilled. You're going to wear these little tags. And if you don't wash your hands when you're supposed to, we're going to record that. What'd they find? That stick, if you will, the stick and carrot argument we talk about, they got about 9.5% compliance. Then they did what seems like the most childish, simple thing. They put these little marquees up over the wash stations. And when someone washed their hands, they got just a little message that said, good job, whatever, a bunch of different messages. No joke, 90% compliance. Just that little difference. And you can go, Google this stuff. It's out there. You'll find the studies on this. There's been a ton of them. But the benefits of positive messages over fear. So when we walk in there and we talk about, woe is me, we have all these vulnerabilities, and then the world is falling down, and hackers are smarter than us, and they only need to find one way in. all you're doing is scaring them. That's not motivating them to support you in what you're trying to do. On that topic, as a CISO standing on stage talking to a room full of people, CISOs say really dumb things. And when I say really dumb, I mean very, very counterproductive and stupid things. One of my favorites, actual CISO, not me, but I've probably said this too, in an actual meeting that I was sitting in said, well, at the end of the day, it's not if companies are going to get hacked, but when. Said that to a member of the board. Okay. Robert Mueller said it in front of Congress. Not untrue, I guess, right? How many of you have said that? I just told you it was dumb, so you're all like, no, I'm not going to admit it now. I said it, come on. People have said this. But here's the problem. You say this in front of the board, and then same CISO, same meeting says, our biggest risk is my budget isn't enough to protect us from attackers. You just told me it's not if, but when we're going to get hacked. And then you said, give me money so you can make sure we don't get hacked. What's wrong with that picture? Hey, give me $1 million so that, I can, do this thing that's going to be wildly ineffective and it's not going to accomplish the goal of keeping us safe anyway. Well, why won't you give me the $1 million? Duh. But again, there's a better way. Instead of talking to them in these weird, crazy platitudes, articulate a roadmap. Show them, this is where we're at today. This is where I want to take us in a year. This is where I want to take us in 3 years. These things that I'm spending that money on, the money that you give me that doesn't go into creating new business necessarily, this is where it's getting spent. This is why it's getting spent, where it is getting spent. And this is what I anticipate the benefit's going to be. I rejected the idea of visions and roadmaps for the longest time because I was a techie person and this seemed like corporate fluff. That was my favorite term for the longest time. I cannot tell you how much more effective I became at influencing others when I started to embrace this. Just that simple concept of being able to say, here's where we are, here's where we're going and why, here's the road that's taking us there. Now they can see, oh, okay, so we give you this much this year, you're going to spend it on this, and then that's going to feed into this for next year. And suddenly it's not year after year you're trying to convince the rest of your ELT who's fighting with you for a finite number of dollars. You're not just sitting there trying to convince them each year that this is why I'm spending the money. You've already laid that out. You've given them that view into your world, what your goals are. And it is impactful. And it does make it easier to keep a budget. I'm fortunate. In my third budget cycle now with this company, every year my budget is increased. Now, I'm not saying that's because I'm some magical, wonderful, amazing CISO who knows everything. I definitely don't. But I do credit myself a little bit that I've been able to defend my spend. I've been able to justify it in the eyes of people who don't necessarily understand the ins and outs of, what is Defender for Cloud, or what is Axonius, or what is Cribble, okay? I mean, these are things that they don't need to understand that. But I'm able to communicate it through a roadmap. Here's why we're going there. So we'll go back to, this is kind of along that same theme of, saying dumb things. It's not a dumb thing. But we also speak in kind of broad absolutes and platitudes, do we not? Never let a good InfoSec crisis go to waste, they say. If you get breached, you've got an open checkbook, go spend money, right? Well, what happens when you get that open checkbook? You use that blank check. You go and you buy 14 top technologies from the Gartner Magic Quadrants across all of these places. And then you put it all in, and you get breached again. Someone's asking questions, aren't they? More than likely, you're falling into that world then of the average CISO lifespan, which the last study I read said was 19 months. You put it out there that I'm going to buy all this stuff and fix all of our problems, but we got hacked again. Why? Because if you look at that as just an open checkbook and you're going to go buy all the cool new toys that you wanted that we didn't have today that you felt were necessary because we're going to tackle zero trust and we're going to implement SOAR and we're going to go all these routes. Boy, back to that roadmap. That is no roadmap. That's a, holy shit, we're implementing the world and going to boil the ocean. That's not how you get there. Yes, you have the opportunity. My organization had a ransomware event in 2020, very public. Public because they shut down half their systems to prevent the spread. And I am a beneficiary of that to this day. Studies that I have read say somewhere between 16 to 20 month tail you typically get as far as like focus from the executive team on security after an event. I'm 4 years post-event, and everybody in my organization still has the, forgive the use of this term, but the PTSD from that event. People who didn't work there understand the trauma of that event and why we don't want to go back. So you can leverage this, but you have to be smart. And one of the things I think we really need to understand, a lot of us get frustrated with things like the Gartner Magic Quadrant and other analysts, talking about top of this or this great new thing, or, we've got vendors sometimes who create new market space, new niche markets that they're the leader because, well, they're the only one who sells that new thing they invented, right? We get frustrated with that, but then we still go out and we're always chasing the best of breed. What's the best product for this? What's the best product for this? What's the best product for this? Well, I can tell you this. As somebody who walked into an organization that had a lot of different tools that were all highly rated by analysts, I found more capability by embracing my E5 contract and consolidating into an ecosystem that works together. Yeah, it was great. We had awesome EDR. Would I ever call Defender awesome? No, probably not. I would call it middle of the road as far as EDR goes. But you know what? When I plug it into my Azure Active Directory, when I plug it into my Sentinel SIM, when I get it connected into Defender for Cloud in my Azure environments, holy crap, I can see things I never imagined because that ecosystem works. Now, I'm not up here standing here telling you should all get, upgrade to an E5 contract and go all in with M365. I'm definitely not a Microsoft cheerleader by any stretch. I'm definitely not a cheerleader. I'm not going to say go out and buy all the Palo stuff either, right? I'm not going to say go out and buy all the Cisco stuff. God love them. They make great stuff. They're right out there in the hallway. But understand that there are times where those ecosystems matter. And they give you capability that you cannot get when you've got disparate systems that have integrations. Well, we integrate with everything. Great. But integrations are always based on APIs. They're always limited. So look for those opportunities where an ecosystem capability is going to exceed what you get by buying a best-of-breed tool. And again, I've got some best-of-breed tools that are not Microsoft. I would never trust throwing my eggs all in one basket with any vendor. But the point here is, this is where we come back to that roadmap again and understanding what is your vision and how you're going to get there. Being an executive who understands good corporate citizenship from an executive level when it comes to budgets. If I'm going out and I'm blowing money on best of breed, this, that, and the other thing, I'm spending a lot of money. Maybe there's a more effective way by embracing my ecosystem. I'm sure you've all have seen the many articles and stats about, the amount of software that's purchased that doesn't get used. Tools that are used to 30% of their capability is common. How can you use what you've already got? Expand on that. All right, one of my favorites. So what do you do as a CISO? Well, I enable the business. Awesome. Love it. Yes. Enable the business. We should be doing that. But what does enable mean? What does it mean to say that the CISO enables the business? Ooh, I ask that question a lot, and I get some really interesting answers. Some of my favorites, why reduce risk? Okay, that's exciting. Wow, you really created a great business. I reduced risk. Okay. Listen to a CISO once say, and I'm not picking on anybody, but I am going to use it as an example. My job is I am a risk management professional. Well, no shit. Everybody in the C-suite is a risk management professional. That's why they're there. If that's the only thing you bring to the conversation is, hey, I'm going to enable your business because I'm going to reduce the risk. Woohoo! Hey, guess what? All that risk you're reducing, they already accepted when they went into business. You're going to reduce the risk of that product? So what? We're already selling it. Whether formally or not, we've already accepted the risk of that business. Come on, you got to do better than that. Imagine if the chief financial officer stood up and said, yeah, my job is just to reduce risk for the business. Dude, where are we getting our financing? How are we managing those loans and the lines of credit? What is that interest rate hike going to mean to us? All the stuff that CFOs are supposed to care about. If we don't, that's where they're enabling the business. Hey, we're going to restructure this debt over here to get a better payment term. That's enabling the business. That's not reducing risk. Yeah, they're there to reduce risk. We all are. So what do we do as cybersecurity professionals? How do we actually enable the business? Well, we've got to align with it, first of all. Now, there's ways to do this. An easy one, and I'm going to give you some examples. Easy one is just to demonstrate cost savings or efficiency gains, right? A lot of us right now, we're looking at AI. How can I get efficiency with chatbots and other things? But you better pay attention to the flip side of that, right? Because a lot of that's going to drive up cost. But we can find ways. Maybe by launching this new self-service password reset and MFA controlling platform, a few come to mind, I'm going to save money for the business because we're not going to have these calls going to the call center. Well, now that's interesting because most of us probably don't run the call center. That's probably an IT function somewhere or something. So, that enables the business because you just gave me more money to spend on other things. You've solved a problem for me. That's a good way to do it. A better way, tied into that, how can I enable them to tackle a wish list item? Something that's been a challenge for them. It's been persistent. They wanted to do it, but they couldn't get there. Maybe it's because I just freed up a bunch of resources with that new EDR platform where now we're not having all of the malware issues we were having before. We're not rebuilding PCs every other week. Maybe I helped launch some type of virtualization, and I tied into that, and that took care of, a big asset management problem for us or a patching issue for us. That's effective because what you've done now is you've tied into the rest of the business. You've got people in other areas of IT, potentially in other areas of your business lines, who now want what you're selling. That's a lot easier to get buy-in in those budget discussions, right? The best is if you can actually use a security technology to create a new revenue stream, or maybe even an entire market differentiator. Now I'm going to give you an example of this because I know there's some of you that are like, how does security create new revenue? All right, game on. I work for a legal services company. We provide products and services to the legal industry. Law firms are a big portion of our client base. Corporate counsel, another big group. Many of our products are like SaaS, basically. You know, we provide these hosted solutions. And so we authenticate them using Okta. So I'm going to throw right out there, right? I'm going to give you a full intro. We're using Okta because that gave us a way to do MFA. Cool, great. But you know what else it did? And this was an unintended consequence that has been super popular. Instead of managing 500 identities for this client, what if I just use Okta Federation and federate all of the identity management to their existing IDP? Azure most times, Azure AD. Well, wait, they would probably love that because they can administer their own users now and we don't have to do that, so that's a win to us. And what if we sold that as a feature? New revenue, market differentiator. Our competitors were not doing that. We spun up by implementing this wonderful cybersecurity technology. We enabled the business and created something new. Now, that's not always possible, but it's out there, and that's what we need to be looking for. It makes us part of the business, and it allows us to better influence. Because at the end of the day, that is the next lesson. Our job is to educate and influence. There is nothing that grates on me more, and I know I sound like I'm just up here bitching and moaning, but hopefully I'm giving you something effective to learn from these lessons. When people say, well, they just don't care. They don't understand. Well, if the rest of your ELT doesn't understand why that big new shiny initiative you have in your security program is important enough to spend money on, guess what? It's on you. Take a look inside for a minute. What did you do to influence them? How did you tell them about that? How did you connect it to anything that was meaningful to them, that was going to make them want it? Because just telling them, well, if we don't do this, you know, there's all these holes that attackers could exploit. Again, fear doesn't motivate. That's not exciting. That's not going to be the thing that's going to, when they're trying to pick between, you know, two line items on a budget, that's not the thing that's going to get, you know, your CEO and everyone else to look at it and say, yeah, that's what we should spend money on. So we have to think about how we can message better. How can we align better with what the business's goals are? And maybe there are things that don't align with the business at all. Should we even be doing them then? Sure, NIST or, you know, ISO or someone says we should do this, or CISA says we should do this. But we also need to look at how does it apply to our business. I'm not saying leave things wide open. I'm not saying, you know, ignore security challenges. But think more critically about, I've got to prioritize a limited budget here. Where am I getting the most bang for my buck? It's going to come from the things that directly align to what the business is doing. One of my favorite examples is DevSecOps. Ooh, that's terrifying. So we had this thing, DevOps came up, right? And everybody started developing really fast, and they united developers and operations, and security was kind of left out in the cold, and so we said, no, it's DevSecOps. We want to play too. But then what do? Well, you got to put quality gates in here, and you got to, in that build cycle, you got to be doing your threat models, and then after you code, you got to run SaaS tools that take 2 weeks because you ship it off to some company. that, will take it and do all their magical stuff. And then when they come back, oh, you're going to have to back up because now you're well into test, but hey, we found these vulnerabilities, so you got to go all the way back to coding again. We basically said we didn't understand what DevOps was. Gates break DevOps, period, full stop. DevOps is a loop. It is not meant to go backward. Now, here's the thing that gets me in trouble with security people. What if we actually understood shared responsibility? The shared responsibility of Dev and Ops is that DevOps was, hey, both developers and operations who up till then were silos and fighting with each other, what if we said they both had the same responsibilities? What if we united them with common goals? What if security did the same? What if part of our goal was making that pipeline more efficient? What if I didn't put a break the build gate in? What if instead I let them publish known vulnerable code? That sounds horrible, doesn't it? But is it? What if, as part of that release, I've been helping them get their CI/CD so efficient that now I can let them publish vulnerable code because it goes back into their issues log as a P1. It's going to be the very next thing they work on. They're going to fix it and release a fix in their next cycle, which, by the way, because we've gotten so good at this, we're doing 3 deploys a day. Now suddenly, maybe I don't care so much about them releasing known vulnerable code because it's going to be fixed the same day. So instead of focusing on how do I stop them from doing the bad thing, I focused on how do I make what they're trying to do better so that then I can leverage it to get what I need from a security perspective out of it. Aligning with the business goals. Because the business just wants to deploy, deploy, deploy. So that's an example. Think inward. How can I do that? Now, I mentioned I sit on a couple boards. No, I didn't. That's okay. I've been presenting to boards for 8 years. And what I've learned is boards will ask dumb questions, but they are really not dumb people. They will say things to you that will leave you like, doing kind of like the RCA dog head tilt thing. But it's because, A, they know they're supposed to ask something, and B, they don't know what to ask. And you know what? CISOs are scared of boards are scared of CISOs. Bridging that gap is something that needs to be done. And understanding how to read what it is that they're asking and pull out of that what it is that they really want to know. So when they come to you and they say something dumb like, are we secure enough? What are they asking? Well, are we getting better? Are we doing the things? We're investing a lot of money. Is it working? Reframe the conversation. When they ask, are you secure? Show them, here, this is not a destination. It's a journey. It's a constant improvement plan. We are continuously improving our security posture. We're never going to get there. I actually had this last one here, when are we done spending on security? Had a board member ask me that. I looked them dead in the face. I said, I'm not trying to be flippant, but when you stop evolving the business and technology stops changing, right? I mean, that's the answer. Then maybe we'll be secure enough and we can slow down. But think about how you can reframe it. These are just a few examples. They're going to ask, well, how many attacks did we block last month? What do they really want to know? They want to know, is this stuff working? What's the story here? Are things getting better or worse? So when you go in and you present metrics to them, your metrics need to tell a story. One thing I've told my team, whenever you're going to put a metric on a piece of paper, know what the story is first. Maybe the metrics told you the story, because you looked at them, you analyzed them, and okay, well, this shows this. Or maybe, just maybe, and this might seem sneaky and slimy, but it's what you got to do, I want to tell a specific story, and I happen to have a metric that supports it. Right? That's not wrong. That's not sneaky and slimy. That's smart. That's playing politics and influencing, right? That's kind of our job. So find the ways to do that. All right, now if I haven't pissed everybody off yet, one more I'm going to throw in there because I know that these 3 little letters have become a hot button, and it pisses me off as a CISO. DEI. I said it. DEI. Diversity, equity, inclusion. This stuff is not about people's feelings. You as a CISO, like any other executive, you as any person working in cybersecurity at any level, are there to solve problems. You do not solve problems by getting a bunch of people in the room who all bought computers at 12 and hacked into Prodigy and were in IRC rooms. If I hired only those people, the people that thought and got here the same way I did, I would have the worst cybersecurity group in the world. That's what diversity is about. The only way you get diversity is by embracing equity and treating everybody the same. And that means looking at yourself and saying, what I see as meritocracy may actually not be meritocracy at all. That might be my biases because I grew up this way, looking down upon certain skills or perspectives that are actually super valuable and would have me questioning things in a way different to how I look at them and solving problems better. Inclusion is making sure that when you hire those amazing, talented, awesome people who challenge you to think differently every day, it's making sure they feel like they're in a job where they're valued and they're going to stick around for you. Because when you find that cool person who really looks at things and makes you have to question your own concepts and gets you guys thinking differently about how to solve a problem, the last thing you want to do is have them run out the door because they think everybody on the team hates them. That's what DEI is about. It is a business imperative. I've heard that tossed around, right? But there's value in it, business value. It's not about making people feel good. Yes, inclusion is about making sure everybody feels like they belong, no matter what their weird is. So where do you start? Start with your job descriptions. Check out this job description. Information security architect. Cool, all right. Well, that's still the job description. That's still the job description. Who are you going to hire when you put all this down? Where did you come up with this? I've blocked out the organization just, to protect the guilty that I don't want to pick on. But consider how we write our job descriptions. Are you writing it because I'm looking for passion? What does that mean? Well, I'm looking for somebody who did the same thing I did. They set up a home lab and they spend a bunch of money and they worked on this, 18 hours of the day. Is that always the person you want to hire? Not me. I want people who think about this stuff differently. I want people who 2 weeks ago were a barista at Starbucks, and I realized that, the way that they work and they think and how they multitask and everything else would be a perfect fit in my sock. They'd be great working security operations. Think about that for a minute. Would you consider hiring someone like that? Why are we looking for these unicorns? More often than not, when we're looking for that unicorn, it's because we're looking for someone who's like us. Look for someone who's not you at all. All right, last one. And I cannot stress this enough for anyone in the room. CISO becomes like this thing for cybersecurity people all too often. And it's the panacea. It's where we want to get to. It's Valhalla. It's where I want to be. It's the culmination of my career. You don't have to be a CISO to be successful. In fact, I would tell you that a lot of people get to be CISOs and they find out that that's the worst thing for their success because they're not good at the job. Am I good at it? I don't know. We'll find out. I'm 2.5 years into this role. We'll see. I hope I'm good at it. I've learned a lot of lessons to get here, though. And it's important to understand, find the thing that works for you. I have plenty of people on my teams who have no desire to even move into any form of management. And we build out progressions for them so they can keep advancing in their career, keep taking on more responsibility. But I don't necessarily need them managing people. I don't necessarily need them managing programs, strategic things like I would ask out of my VPs, or I would be asked, of course, of me as a CISO. So understand what success looks like for you, and don't just default to, I've got to go up the corporate ladder or whatever. If this is something that sounds cool to you, you want to own an entire organization's cybersecurity posture and be the person that they're going to come ask questions to when things go badly, do it. It's a fun job. I love the hell out of it. But don't feel like you have to be here. There are so many other ways to be successful in cybersecurity. So with that, I'm going to leave you with this quote, just because this goes all the way back to those mistakes that we talked about at the beginning. You know what? You're going to fail. Everyone in this room is going to fail. I have failed countless times. It's what you do after you fail that determines your success. Okay? If you let it scare you into inaction, if you let it shut you down, if you don't embrace that as, here's something for me to learn differently. I went into that board meeting and I got blasted for 40 minutes and they're threatening to take away my budget. What did you learn? Don't blame the board members for being jerks. Sometimes they are. But what did you learn from that, and what are you going to take with you for the next one? All right, my time is pretty much up here, but it has been a pleasure. I hope you guys, we got 2 great days here. There's a lot of awesome topics. I was checking out the schedule earlier today. So get out to the sessions. Say hi, of course, to the sponsors here, because they're the ones that make sure we can all be here and have fun today and tomorrow and meet cool new people. And meet people. Meet people. Because this is your opportunity to network with folks who know your pain, and maybe you'll learn something too. Awesome. Thanks, everybody.